The spreadsheet blurred before my eyes as I blinked hard, willing away the fatigue that had become my constant companion. 3 years, 2 months, 17 days. That's how long I'd been Dante Moretti's executive assistant, tracking his meetings, managing his territory operations, and pretending not to notice the way every single person in this organization moved through the world like they were one wrong word away from disappearing. I didn't have that luxury. Someone had to tell Dante when his 3 p.m. conflicted with his other 3 p.m., and apparently I was the only one willing to risk the glacial silence that followed. My fingers flew across the keyboard, reconciling tomorrow's logistics for the shipment routes through the Port of Newark. Dante Moretti didn't accept excuses, only solutions. 3 years as his right hand had taught me to anticipate problems 6 moves ahead, like chess but with federal investigations and territorial disputes disguised as legitimate business acquisitions. The office smelled like leather and expensive whiskey, undertones of cedar from whatever cologne Dante wore that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The Moretti family controlled everything from the docks to the downtown restaurants, all wrapped in the veneer of legitimate enterprise. I'd stopped asking questions about the discrepancies I noticed in the paperwork about 2 years ago. I just made sure the numbers aligned perfectly, the alibis were airtight, and Dante's calendar never showed him anywhere near the actual crime. My phone buzzed. Internal line. I glanced at the security camera feed showing the main entrance. A car had just pulled up, expensive and unfamiliar. The intercom crackled to life. "Miss Chin." Dante's voice carried that particular edge that meant he was tracking something I hadn't anticipated yet. "Yes, Mr. Moretti. Luca Santoro arrives in 3 minutes. Make sure the conference room is prepared. Espresso, not coffee. The Pellegrino contract's on the table, not the desk." I was already moving, pulling up Luca Santoro's file on my secondary monitor. New Capo recently transferred from the Chicago Famiglia. 32 years old. Decorated military background before joining the organization, reputation for being both charming and lethal in equal measure. Dante had been consolidating power by bringing in outside talent, and Santoro was apparently the latest acquisition. "The Pellegrino contracts are confidential," I said carefully. "Should I prepare the standard NDA, or has he already been cleared?" Pause. The kind that made junior associates sweat. I'd learned to find it almost meditative. "He's been cleared. He'll be working directly with you on the port consolidation project." My hands stilled on the keyboard. "Directly with me? You have a problem with that, Miss Chin?" "No problem, Mr. Moretti. I just wasn't aware the port project required additional personnel." I kept my tone professionally neutral, the same voice I'd used to confirm a dentist appointment. "Should I adjust my workflow projections? Santoro has connections with the longshoremen's union that we need. You have the strategic oversight. Between you, this deal closes within 30 days. His tone shifted slightly, almost imperceptible. "I trust you'll maintain your usual standard of excellence." "Of course." The line went dead. I gathered the Pellegrino contracts, my mind already recalibrating. Working directly with a new capo meant my carefully maintained distance from the family's operational side was about to dissolve. For 3 years I'd existed in this strange liminal space, close enough to Dante to know everything, far enough from the violence to maintain plausible deniability. That was apparently ending today. I smoothed my black pencil skirt, adjusted the silk blouse I'd chosen that morning, and headed to the conference room with the contracts and my tablet. The espresso machine hissed as I prepared 2 cups. Dante would want one too, even if he didn't admit it. The elevator chimed. I glanced up to see Dante emerge first, dressed in a charcoal suit tailored so precisely it might have been painted on. Dark hair styled with military precision, jaw sharp enough to cut glass. Behind him came Luca Santoro. Where Dante was all controlled menace and cold calculation, Santoro radiated warmth. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was slightly too long to be regulation, warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore his suit well, but there was something more relaxed about him, like he hadn't yet absorbed the perpetual tension that defined everyone in Dante's inner circle. "Miss Chin." Dante's gaze found me immediately, assessing. "This is Luca Santoro. Luca, Sophia Chin, my executive assistant and the only person in this organization whose strategic analysis I trust without verification." The introduction was more generous than Dante usually offered. I extended my hand professionally. Mr. Santoro, welcome to New York. His handshake was firm, warm, his smile genuine. Please call me Luca. And I've heard incredible things about you, Miss Chin. They say you're the reason the Moretti operations run like clockwork. They exaggerate, I said, withdrawing my hand. I just make sure Mr. Moretti's calendar doesn't implode. Shall we? I gestured toward the conference room. Dante moved past me, his arm brushing mine for just a fraction of a second. The contact sent awareness sparking up my arm, a reaction I'd been determinedly ignoring for 3 years. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Inside the conference room, I laid out the Pellegrino contracts with practiced efficiency. The port consolidation hinges on acquiring Pellegrino Shipping's dock access. They control berths 7 through 12, which gives us direct access to the container routes we need for the Mediterranean supply chain. Luca leaned forward, studying the contracts with focused attention. What's their resistance point? Why haven't they sold already? Family loyalty, I said. The Pellegrinos have held those docks for 4 generations. Vincent Pellegrino won't sell to just anyone, especially not to someone he perceives as hostile to union interests. That's where Luca comes in, Dante said, his voice flat. His connections with the longshoremen can provide the assurances Pellegrino needs. Sophia will handle the negotiation strategy. You'll handle the relationship building. I pulled up the analysis I'd been working on for weeks. I've identified 3 pressure points. Pellegrino's youngest son wants to sell and move the family into legitimate real estate. The union representatives are concerned about job security under new ownership. And Vincent himself is 67 with no clear succession plan. Luca whistled softly. You've done your homework. I always do, I met his eyes steadily. The question is whether you can deliver on the union assurances without triggering federal oversight. The dock workers have been under investigation twice in the last 5 years. Something flickered in Luca's expression. Respect maybe, or surprise that I'd speak so directly. I can deliver. The union leadership trusts me. I spent 2 years working the Chicago ports before joining the family. I know how to navigate their concerns without attracting attention. For the next 90 minutes we worked through the strategy. Luca asked intelligent questions, challenged assumptions without being dismissive, and demonstrated a working knowledge of port operations that impressed even me. More surprising, he listened when I explained the financial structures, taking notes and asking for clarification when needed. Dante mostly watched, interjecting occasionally with surgical precision to redirect or refine a point. But I felt his attention on me throughout, that familiar weight of his gaze tracking my every movement. We'll start with the youngest Pellegrino, I concluded. Marco. He's the weak link. If we can get him on board, he'll pressure his father from the inside while Luca works the union angle externally. When can we set up the first meeting? Luca asked. I'll have Marco here by Friday, I said. He drinks at Carluccio's every Thursday night. Gambling problem, substantial debts to 3 separate bookies. I can have one of those debts purchased by tomorrow, which gives us leverage for the Friday meeting. Luca stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. The sound was warm, genuine, completely unexpected in the cold efficiency of Dante's conference room. You're terrifying. I mean that as the highest compliment. I felt myself smile slightly, the expression surprising me. I'll take it as one. Dante stood abruptly. Luca, Miguel will show you to your office. Sophia, a word. The dismissal was clear. Luca gathered his materials, nodding at me with that warm smile. Looking forward to working with you, Sophia. This is going to be interesting. Interesting is one word for it, I replied. After he left, the conference room felt colder. Dante stood at the windows overlooking the city, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense beneath the expensive fabric. Mr. Moretti? I kept my voice neutral. Is there a problem with the strategy? The strategy is flawless. You know it is. He didn't turn around. How long have you been planning the Marco Pellegrino approach? 3 weeks. Since you first mentioned wanting to acquire the docks. I moved to stand beside him, maintaining professional distance. I anticipated you'd need leverage beyond standard negotiation. You anticipated correctly. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You smiled at him. The observation was so unexpected I actually blinked. I'm sorry. Santoro. You smiled at him. Laughed. Now he turned to face me, his gray eyes intense. In 3 years I've never seen you laugh during a business meeting. My pulse jumped. This was dangerous territory, the kind where professional boundaries started dissolving. He made an observation that I found amusing, Mr. Moretti. It doesn't affect my work performance. I didn't say it did. He moved closer, stopping just inside what I considered my personal space. I'm simply noting a change in your usual demeanor. You brought in a new capo who treats me like a colleague instead of an assistant, I said carefully. That's different from how most of the family operates. It's refreshing. Something dark flickered across Dante's face. Refreshing. Yes. I held his gaze, refusing to back down. Most of your people either ignore me completely or treat me like expensive furniture. Luca asked intelligent questions and actually listened to the answers. That's noteworthy. Luca, Dante repeated, his voice dropping lower. You're already on a first-name basis. He asked me to use his first name, I pointed out, confusion starting to override my professional composure. Is there a problem with that? Dante was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. No problem. Just an observation. He returned to his desk, effectively dismissing me. I gathered my tablet and headed for the door, my mind spinning. That entire interaction had been strange, weighted with something I couldn't quite identify. Back at my desk, I pulled up Marco Pellegrino's financial records and started making the necessary arrangements. But I couldn't shake the memory of Dante's expression when he'd said I'd smiled at Luca. Jealousy? No, impossible. Dante Moretti didn't do jealousy. He barely did emotions. In 3 years I'd seen him angry exactly twice, both times with a cold, controlled fury that had resulted in people disappearing from the organization. But jealousy? Over me laughing during a business meeting? Ridiculous. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Luca. Got your number from the directory. Wanted to say thanks for the warm welcome. Most assistants in this business treat newcomers like potential threats. You actually helped me understand the situation. Appreciate it. I stared at the message, surprised by the genuine friendliness. In 3 years, no one in the family had ever texted me anything beyond curt operational updates. I typed back, just doing my job. See you Friday for the Pellegrino meeting. His response came immediately. Looking forward to it. By the way, you were right about the union pressure points. Already reached out to my contacts. This is going to work. A smile tugged at my lips before I could stop it. Professional competence recognized and appreciated. When was the last time someone in this organization had actually said, "Thank you for my work"? The intercom crackled. Miss Chin. I jumped slightly, pressing the response button. Yes, Mr. Moretti? Who are you texting? The question made my spine straighten. I glanced at the security camera I knew was positioned to give Dante a clear view of my desk. Luca Santoro. He was confirming some details about the union outreach. Silence. Then, handle it however you see fit. But remember, Miss Chin, Santoro is new to this organization. His loyalty hasn't been tested yet. Don't share anything that could compromise our position if he proves unreliable. Of course, Mr. Moretti. I would never compromise operational security. The intercom clicked off. I sat back in my ergonomic chair, the one Dante had ordered after noticing I'd been rubbing my lower back during a 14-hour contract review session 2 years ago, and tried to understand what the hell was happening. Dante was being protective. That made sense. I had access to information that could dismantle his entire empire. But this felt different. More personal. Like he wasn't just protecting his organization but something else entirely. My phone buzzed again. Luca, dinner tomorrow? Would love to pick your brain about the other families in New York. Still learning the landscape. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was a work relationship. Dinner to discuss business strategy was perfectly normal. Except something told me accepting would trigger another strange interaction with Dante, and I wasn't sure I was ready to navigate that minefield. But Luca was my colleague now. Working relationship required some social interaction. And honestly, it would be nice to have a meal with someone who didn't communicate exclusively in controlled menace and Arctic silence. I typed, dinner works. Rossini's at 7? It's neutral territory and the owner is family adjacent. We can talk freely. Perfect. See you then. I saved his number and returned to work, determinedly ignoring the small flutter of anticipation in my chest. This was professional. Absolutely nothing that should concern Dante Moretti. So why did I feel like I just made a decision that would change everything? The rest of the afternoon passed in typical controlled chaos. I coordinated 3 conference calls, reviewed contracts for the legitimate business acquisitions that funded the family's operations, and scheduled next week's meetings with the precision of air traffic control. At 6:47 p.m., most of the office had emptied. Only Dante remained in his private suite, door closed, voice occasionally audible through the soundproofing when a call became heated. I was gathering my things when the door opened. Dante emerged, tie loosened, sleeves rolled to his elbows. It was the most casual I'd seen him all day, and the sight did something dangerous to my carefully maintained composure. Heading out, Miss Chin? Unless you need something else, Mr. Moretti? He moved to my desk, leaning against it with deceptive casualness. The Pellegrino strategy is solid. I trust you'll keep me updated on Santoro's progress with the union contacts. Of course. His gray eyes studied me, searching for something I couldn't identify. You're having dinner with him tomorrow. Not a question. A statement of fact that confirmed Miguel had already reported my plans. Yes, I said evenly. He's new to the New York families. I'm providing strategic context about the local power structure. Standard onboarding for new personnel. Standard onboarding happens in this office during business hours. Standard onboarding is for soldiers and made men, I countered. Luca is a capo. He deserves professional courtesy and comprehensive briefing. Dinner allows for more detailed discussion without the time constraints of the workday. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You're very concerned with what Santoro deserves. The observation landed like an accusation. I set down my bag, turning to face him fully. Mr. Moretti, with respect, is there a problem with me doing my job? Your job is being my executive assistant. My job is making sure your operations run smoothly. That includes ensuring new capos have the information they need to succeed. I kept my voice level despite the frustration building in my chest. If you have concerns about Luca's loyalty or capabilities, that's a separate discussion. But questioning my professional judgment after 3 years of impeccable service feels. I stopped myself before I said something I'd regret. Feels what? His voice had dropped to that dangerous softness. Unfair, I finished quietly. You've never questioned my decisions before. Why start now? For a long moment we simply looked at each other. The office was silent except for the distant hum of traffic 43 floors below. You're right, Dante said finally. Your judgment has been impeccable. I apologize for questioning it. The apology was so unexpected I actually blinked. Dante Moretti didn't apologize. Not to anyone, not ever. Thank you, I managed. He nodded once, then returned to his office without another word. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone in the dimming light. I stood there for a full minute trying to process what had just happened. Then I grabbed my bag and headed for the elevator, my mind racing. Something had shifted today. Something fundamental in the carefully constructed professional distance I'd maintained with Dante for 3 years. I just couldn't figure out what it meant or where it would lead. The elevator descended and I watched the city lights blur past through the glass walls. Tomorrow I'd have dinner with Luca Santoro, discuss family politics and union negotiations, and pretend today's strangeness was just a temporary anomaly. But deep in my gut I knew better. The careful world I'd built was starting to crack, and I had no idea what would emerge from the fissures. Rossini's was exactly what I'd promised. Neutral territory with the best osso buco in Little Italy and an owner who knew when to be deaf and blind to the conversations happening in his back booths. I arrived at 6:55 p.m., early enough to secure the corner table that offered clear sight lines to both entrances. Old habits from 3 years of working for Dante. Always know your exits. Always control the environment. Luca arrived at exactly 7 p.m., dressed in dark jeans and a black button-down that made him look less like a capo and more like someone I might have met in a normal life. He smiled when he spotted me, that warm, genuine expression that still felt foreign in my world of calculated interactions. Sophia. You look great. He slid into the booth across from me. Thanks for doing this. I know you probably have better things to do on a Wednesday night than educate the new guy. Better things like reorganizing my closet by color? I smiled slightly. This is actually more interesting. The waiter appeared, Antonio, who'd been serving Moretti family members for 2 decades. He nodded at me with familiar respect. Miss Chen. The usual. Please. And bring a bottle of the Brunello. After Antonio disappeared, Luca raised an eyebrow. The usual? You come here often. Dante conducts business here occasionally. I coordinate the meetings, which means I've memorized the menu and established rapport with the staff. I unfolded my napkin with practiced precision. Antonio knows to seat us away from the windows and ensure adjacent tables remain empty during sensitive conversations. Strategic even at dinner, Luca observed. Does Dante know you're this thorough about everything? He pays me to be thorough about everything. The wine arrived. Antonio poured with expert efficiency, then vanished like smoke. I lifted my glass, studying Luca across the candlelight. In this context, away from the office's oppressive formality, he seemed even more out of place. Too warm, too open, too human for the world of calculated violence we inhabited. So, he said, mirroring my gesture with his own glass. Educate me. What do I need to know about the New York families that won't appear in any official briefing? I took a sip of wine, organizing my thoughts. The Morettis control the docks, most of the shipping routes, and about 60% of the legitimate construction contracts in the city. Dante's father built the foundation, but Dante expanded it by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone else. And where do the other families fit in? The Catalanos control gambling and most of the underground economy, sports betting, card rooms, loan sharking. The Russos handle the restaurant and hospitality industry, which gives them access to money laundering infrastructure. The Benedettis run the waste management and trucking, which overlaps with our shipping interests in ways that create constant tension. Luca listened with focused attention, occasionally asking clarifying questions that demonstrated genuine strategic thinking. Our food arrived, osso buco for me, bistecca for him, and we continued talking through the complex web of alliances, rivalries, and uneasy truces that define New York's underworld. What about Dante himself? Luca asked, cutting into his steak. Everyone talks about him like he's this untouchable force of nature. But you work with him every day. What's he actually like? I considered the question carefully. Brilliant. Controlled. Fair in his own way. If you're competent and loyal, he'll protect you. If you're incompetent or betray him, you disappear. I paused. He doesn't waste energy on emotions. Everything is calculated toward a specific outcome. That sounds lonely. The observation surprised me. I hadn't thought about it that way. You work for him every day and you haven't thought about whether he's lonely? Luca's smile was gentle, not mocking. You're more observant than that, Sophia. I took another sip of wine, discomfort prickling along my spine. Dante's personal life isn't my concern. I manage his professional obligations. Does he have a personal life? I stopped. In 3 years I'd never seen Dante with anyone. No girlfriend, no casual dates, no one-night encounters whispered about by the family. He worked, he planned, he executed strategies. That was all. I don't know, I admitted finally. I've never seen him with anyone. And you? Luca's tone was casual, but his eyes were attentive. What does Sophia Chen do when she's not being Dante Moretti's terrifyingly competent right hand? I laughed before I could stop myself. Terrifying seems to be your favorite adjective for me. Because it's accurate. You walked into that conference room and casually mentioned purchasing someone's gambling debt like you were ordering office supplies. He grinned. It was impressive and slightly intimidating. I read people and situations, I said. That's my value. I see the patterns others miss and I anticipate problems before they become crises. That's not an answer to my question. I met his eyes across the table, recognizing the genuine curiosity there. When was the last time someone had asked about me? Not about my work performance or my strategic analysis, but about who I was beyond the role I played. I don't really have hobbies, I said slowly. This job doesn't leave much room for outside interests. I work 6 days a week, sometimes 7. When I'm not working, I'm usually sleeping or preparing for the next day. The admission sounded pathetic even to my own ears. I volunteer at a community center on Sundays sometimes, teaching financial literacy to people who need it. Something shifted in Luca's expression. Financial literacy? That's specific. My parents immigrated from Taiwan with nothing. They worked constantly but never quite got ahead because they didn't understand the systems designed to trap them. I traced the rim of my wine glass. Predatory loans, hidden fees, contracts they couldn't read properly. I watched them struggle for years before I learned enough to help them navigate it. That's why you're so good at seeing the traps in contracts, Luca said quietly. You learned to protect your family. And now I use those skills to help Dante exploit the same systems that hurt people like my parents. The irony tasted bitter. I'm aware of the hypocrisy. You're surviving, Luca corrected. There's no shame in that. We finished dinner talking about less heavy topics. Chicago versus New York, the best coffee shops near the office, whether the Yankees or the Mets deserved loyalty. It was easy, comfortable in a way I hadn't experienced since college, before I'd entered Dante's world and learned to weigh every word. By the time Antonio brought the check, I realized I was genuinely enjoying myself. Luca was funny, thoughtful, and refreshingly direct. He treated me like an equal, not an asset or a threat. Thank you for this, he said as we stood to leave. Not just the strategic briefing but the actual conversation. It's nice to talk to someone in this world who still seems human. You're welcome, I said, meaning it. And Luca? Be careful with that humanity. This business has a way of grinding it out of people. His smile was sad. Is that what happened to Dante? I thought about the man I'd worked for. Brilliant, isolated, communicating through controlled menace because genuine connection was too dangerous. I think that's what he chose. Self-preservation disguised as strategy. We stepped out into the cool October night. Luca's car was parked across the street, a sleek black Mercedes that screamed organized crime, despite its legitimate appearance. Can I give you a ride home? He offered. I'm only 10 blocks away. I usually walk. At 9:30 at night? In this neighborhood. His expression turned concerned. Sophia, that's not safe. I've been doing it for 3 years without incident, I pointed out. But thank you for the concern. He looked like he wanted to argue, then nodded reluctantly. At least text me when you get home, so I know you made it safely. The request was sweet, protective without being controlling. I found myself smiling. Hey, I'll text you. Good. He squeezed my shoulder briefly, the contact warm and friendly. See you Friday for the Pellegrino meeting. I watched him drive away, then started the familiar walk to my apartment. The streets were busy enough. Couples heading to late dinners, tourists wandering with phones out, the usual Manhattan chaos. I'd made this walk hundreds of times without thinking twice. Tonight, though, I felt hyper-aware of my surroundings. Maybe it was Luca's concern making me paranoid. Or maybe it was the black SUV that had been parked across from Rossini's and was now following me at a discreet distance. I didn't panic. Panic was useless. Instead, I cataloged details. Tinted windows, New York plates, expensive model. Could be family security. Dante sometimes had Miguel or another guard shadow me during late nights. Could be something else entirely. I turned down my usual shortcut, an alley that cut between 2 buildings and saved 5 minutes. The SUV couldn't follow there. If it was legitimate security, they'd wait at the other end. If it was something else. I heard the footsteps behind me too late. 2 men moving fast. I spun, reaching for the pepper spray in my purse, but one of them caught my wrist with bruising force. Don't fight and you won't get hurt, he growled. Russian accent. Thick and unmistakable. My mind raced, cataloging information even as adrenaline flooded my system. Russians meant this was about territory, about the port consolidation, about Dante's expansion threatening someone else's interests. I don't have anything valuable, I said, keeping my voice steady. My purse has maybe $200. Take it. We don't want your money, Miss Chin. The second man moved closer. We want you to deliver a message to Dante Moretti. Tell him the Volkov family doesn't appreciate his aggressive expansion. Tell him to back off the Pellegrino deal, or there will be consequences. The Volkovs, I repeated, committing every detail to memory. You're threatening Dante through me? We're making our position clear through the most efficient channel available. The first man released my wrist, shoving me back against the alley wall. You're his weakness, Miss Chin. He might pretend otherwise, But everyone knows you're the only person he actually values. Hurt you and we hurt him. They left as quickly as they'd appeared, footsteps echoing away into the darkness. I stood there for a full minute, breathing hard, my wrists throbbing where the man had grabbed me. Then I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never done in 3 years of employment. I called Dante directly on his personal cell. He answered on the first ring. Sophia. Not Miss Chin. Just my name, sharp with concern. What's wrong? I just got a message from the Volkovs, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. 2 men cornered me in the alley near my apartment. They want you to back off the Pellegrino deal. They mentioned you by name and called me your weakness. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. Then, where are you right now? Still in the alley. East 7th between. Don't move. Miguel is 3 minutes away. Dante, I'm fine. They didn't hurt me, they put their hands on you. His voice had dropped to that dangerous softness. That's enough. Stay on the line. Don't hang up until Miguel reaches you. I heard activity in the background. Voices, movement, the rapid-fire Italian that meant Dante was mobilizing his people. My hand was shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting as the immediate danger passed. I'm okay, I said, needing to convince myself as much as him. Just scared. But I got a good look at both of them. I can identify. Sophia. The way he said my name made me stop talking. You're going to be okay. I promise. Miguel is 90 seconds out. I heard the SUV before I saw it. The same one that had been following me, I realized. Not a threat, my protection. Miguel emerged like a mountain made of muscle and controlled violence, his eyes scanning the alley with professional efficiency. She's secure, Miguel said into his own phone, presumably to Dante. No visible injuries. Taking her to the safe house now. Wait, safe house? I protested. My apartment is compromised, Dante's voice came through my phone. If the Volkovs know where you live, you're not going back there tonight. Miguel will take you somewhere secure. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. The call ended before I could argue. Miguel gestured toward the SUV with unexpected gentleness. Miss Chen, please. Let's get you somewhere safe. I let him guide me to the vehicle, my legs suddenly unsteady. As we pulled away from the alley, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Pale, shaken, no longer the controlled professional I'd been at dinner with Luca. This was the reality of Dante's world. Not conference rooms and strategic analysis, but violence lurking in alleys, families who saw me as leverage, danger that I'd somehow forgotten was always present. Miguel drove in silence through Manhattan's streets, eventually pulling into an underground garage I didn't recognize. We took a private elevator to the top floor, emerging into a penthouse that was clearly designed as a fortress. Reinforced door, security cameras, windows that I suspected were bulletproof. Mr. Moretti will be here soon, Miguel said. There's coffee in the kitchen if you want it. I'll be right outside the door. Then I was alone in the sleek, modern space, adrenaline finally deserting me completely. I sank onto the leather sofa, my hands still shaking, and tried to process what had just happened. The Volkovs knew who I was, knew where I lived, had identified me as Dante's weakness and decided I was fair game for intimidation. The door opened 18 minutes later. Dante strode in, still in his suit but with his tie gone and his expression carved from stone. His eyes found me immediately, scanning for injuries with an intensity that made my breath catch. Are you hurt? His voice was controlled, but I heard the fury underneath. My wrist is bruised where one of them grabbed me, I said. Otherwise no. They weren't there to hurt me, just to deliver a message. He crossed the space in 3 strides, kneeling in front of me and taking my wrist with unexpected gentleness. The bruise was already darkening, finger marks visible against my pale skin. Something dangerous flickered across his face. Tell me exactly what they said, he commanded softly. Every word. I recited the conversation, watching Dante's expression grow colder with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, still holding my wrist like he could heal it through sheer will. They called you my weakness, he said finally. Yes. They're not wrong. He looked up, meeting my eyes. You are my weakness, Sophia. The only one that matters. The confession hung between us, weighted with 3 years of carefully maintained professional distance suddenly collapsing. Dante. I should have anticipated this, he continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. The moment we started moving on the ports, I should have known the Volkovs would respond. They've been trying to expand their territory for months. This deal threatens them. And instead of coming at me directly, they identified the most efficient pressure point. His thumb brushed over my bruised wrist, featherlight. You. I can handle intimidation, I said, trying to sound stronger than I felt. I'll file a police report, increase my security awareness. You're not going back to your apartment. Dante, you can't just. They know where you live, Sophia. His eyes were intense, unflinching. Which means your apartment is no longer safe. You'll stay here until I've handled the Volkov situation. For how long? As long as it takes. He released my wrist, standing and moving to the windows. This penthouse has security that your apartment building doesn't. Miguel or another guard will be posted outside 24 hours a day. You'll have a driver to and from the office. No more walking alone, no more predictable routines they can exploit. The cage he was building around me was golden but still a cage. I didn't sign up to be a prisoner. You signed up to work for me, he said quietly. That means accepting my protection when threats emerge. This isn't negotiable. I stood, anger finally overriding fear. Everything is negotiable, Dante. That's how this works. You don't get to just decide my entire life needs to change because... Because what? He turned from the windows, his voice dropping to that dangerous softness. Because I refuse to let anyone hurt you? Because the thought of those men putting their hands on you makes me want to burn down every Volkov property in this city? The raw emotion in his voice stopped my protest cold. You're my assistant, he continued, each word precise. My strategist. The only person whose judgment I trust without question. But you're also... He stopped, jaw tightening. You're more than that. You have been for longer than I've been willing to admit. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying that keeping you safe isn't just about protecting my operations or maintaining organizational security. He moved closer, stopping just inside my personal space. It's about protecting you because the alternative, anything happening to you because of your association with me, is unacceptable. That sounds possessive, I managed. It is possessive. No apology in his tone. I'm aware. But I'm done pretending I see you as just an employee when we both know that stopped being true months ago. The confession crystallized something I'd been denying. The way his attention felt different from professional oversight. The jealousy when I'd smiled at Luca. The careful distance we'd both maintained because crossing that line would change everything. Once. I whispered. 18 months, 2 weeks, 3 days. His hand came up, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. That's when I realized you'd become indispensable not because of your strategic abilities, but because I'd started structuring my entire day around the moments I'd see you. The admission should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. Why didn't you say anything? Because you deserved better than a man whose empire is built on violence and moral compromise. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. Because crossing that line with an employee is unforgivable. Because I thought I could control it, maintain distance, protect you by keeping you at arm's length. And now the Volkovs have identified you as my weakness, which means pretending distance is pointless. His eyes searched mine. Now I'm asking you to trust me to keep you safe while I handle this threat. And then we'll figure out what this, he gestured between us, actually means. I should have pulled away. Should have insisted on maintaining professional boundaries. Should have protected myself from the complications of falling for a man whose world was built on calculated violence. Instead, I leaned into his touch. Okay, I'll stay here until the Volkov situation is handled. I held his gaze steadily. But Dante, after this is resolved, we're going to have a serious conversation about what more than an employee actually means. Because I'm not interested in being your kept woman or your dirty secret. His smile was slight but genuine. I'd expect nothing less from you. He kissed my forehead, chaste and restrained, then stepped back. There are clothes in the bedroom, various sizes. I had them brought in while Miguel was collecting you. Take whatever you need. The kitchen is fully stocked. Make yourself comfortable. Where will you be? Handling the Volkovs. The warmth disappeared from his voice, replaced by cold calculation. They made a mistake tonight, Sophia. They'll realize that very soon. He left before I could respond, the door closing with a soft click. I stood alone in the fortress penthouse, my mind spinning with everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. Dinner with Luca. The Volkov ambush. Dante's confession that I'd been more than an employee for 18 months. Everything had changed, and I had no idea if that change would save me or destroy me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, knowing Dante was somewhere in the city, handling the Volkovs in ways I could imagine but didn't want to confirm? Instead, I explored the penthouse fortress that would be my prison until further notice. The bedroom was sterile but expensive. King-sized bed with hotel-quality linens. Closet filled with women's clothes in various sizes still bearing designer tags. The bathroom had luxury toiletries, a rainfall shower, heated floors. Every detail screamed that this place had been prepared not just tonight but in advance. How long had Dante been planning for a scenario where I'd need protection? At 3:47 a.m. I heard the door open. I emerged from the bedroom in borrowed pajamas to find Dante standing in the living room, his white shirt stained with something dark, his knuckles split and bleeding. "You're hurt," I said, moving toward him automatically. "It's not my blood." His voice was flat, empty. The tone that meant he'd done terrible things and locked away any feeling about it. "The Volkovs have been neutralized. You're safe now." Neutralized? I stopped 3 feet away, studying his face. "What does that mean?" "It means they won't threaten you again." He moved past me toward the bar, pouring 3 fingers of whiskey and downing it in one swallow. "It means I made an example that will discourage others from making the same mistake." "Dante." "I don't want to talk about it, Sophia." He poured another drink, his hand steady despite the split knuckles. "What I did tonight was necessary. It was also brutal. And you don't need those images in your head." But I could imagine them anyway. Could picture Dante, controlled, brilliant Dante, unleashing the violence he usually delegated to others. The monster beneath the expensive suits, the darkness that built empires. "Did you kill them?" I asked quietly. "The 2 men who grabbed me?" His eyes met mine, gray and cold. "Yes." The single word should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Relief that the threat was gone, guilt that men had died because of me, and something darker that I didn't want to examine too closely. Satisfaction, maybe, that Dante had valued me enough to become a monster on my behalf. "I should be horrified," I heard myself say. "You should." He set down the glass, finally looking at me properly. "Any decent person would be." "I've worked for you for 3 years, Dante. I stopped being a decent person about 2 years ago." I closed the distance between us, taking his damaged hand in mine. "Let me clean this up." He let me lead him to the kitchen where I found a first aid kit under the sink. Of course this place had a fully stocked first aid kit. I wet a clean towel and began carefully cleaning the blood from his knuckles, cataloging the damage with clinical detachment. 2 split knuckles, contusions across the metacarpals, possible hairline fracture in the 4th finger, I murmured. "You should have let Miguel handle the physical violence. You have people for this." I needed to do it myself. His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "They touched you." That required a personal response. I looked up from his hand, finding his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "That's not rational." "Nothing about you makes me rational, Sophia." His free hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I've built my entire life on cold calculation. But the moment I saw those bruises on your wrist, I stopped thinking and started feeling. And what I felt was rage so pure it frightened me." I finished cleaning his knuckles, applying antibiotic ointment with gentle precision. "What happens now?" "Now you stay here for the next few days while I ensure the Volkov family understands the consequences of targeting you. I'll have your things moved from your apartment. Miguel will drive you to and from the office. Your routines will be predictable only to me." "And the Pellegrino deal?" "Continues as planned. Friday's meeting with Marco happens. Luca proceeds with the union negotiations." He watched me wrap gauze around his knuckles. "Your work doesn't change, Sophia. Just your living situation. Temporarily." Something flickered in his expression. "We'll see." I tied off the gauze but didn't release his hand. "Dante, you said I've been more than an employee for 18 months. What exactly does that mean?" He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "It means I've been in love with you for longer than I've been willing to admit." It means every decision I make considers your safety before profit margins. It means the thought of you with someone else, laughing with Santoro, smiling at him the way you never smile at me, makes me want to destroy things. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open in my chest. You've been in love with me. Yes. No hesitation, no deflection. Inconveniently. Dangerously. But yes. Why didn't you say anything? Because you deserve someone normal. Someone whose protection doesn't require killing people in alleys. His eyes searched mine. Someone who can offer you a life that doesn't include safe houses and armed guards in constant danger. Maybe I don't want normal, I heard myself say. Maybe I want someone who sees me as more than competent. Someone who values my strategic mind and challenges me, and I stopped, the words caught in my throat. And what? His voice was soft, encouraging. And looks at me like I'm the most important thing in their entire world. The admission cost me vulnerability I'd been protecting for 3 years. You look at me like that, Dante. You have for longer than 18 months. I just didn't let myself see it because acknowledging it would change everything. Does it change everything? His hand tightened on mine. Now that you see it? I thought about the past 24 hours. Dinner with Luca that had felt easy and comfortable. The Volkov ambush that had crystallized exactly how dangerous my proximity to Dante was. His confession that I'd become his weakness. The split knuckles that proved he'd become a monster to protect me. Yes, I said quietly. It changes everything. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. I can't promise you normal, Sophia. I can't promise you safe or easy or anything resembling the life you deserve. But I can promise that I'll protect you with everything I have. That I'll value your mind and your independence and your sharp tongue that cuts through my bullshit. That I'll never ask you to be smaller or quieter or more convenient. That's a better promise than normal, I whispered. He kissed me then. Not gentle, not tentative, but with 3 years of denied want compressed into a single moment. His mouth claimed mine with an intensity that made my knees weak, his hands sliding into my hair, destroying any remaining distance between us. I kissed him back, 3 years of professional boundaries dissolving as I finally let myself feel everything I'd been denying. My hands found his shoulders, gripping the fabric of his blood-stained shirt, anchoring myself to him as the world tilted on its axis. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with want and something deeper. Stay with me, he said, voice rough. Not just until the Volkov situation settles. Stay with me. That's a significant commitment. I know what I'm asking. His thumb traced my swollen bottom lip. I'm asking you to choose this life consciously. To understand that being with me means inheriting my enemies, accepting protection you don't think you need, living with the reality of what I do. I'm asking you to choose me knowing exactly who I am. I thought about the man who'd hired me 3 years ago and seen past my desperate need for employment to the strategic mind underneath. Who'd pushed me to be better, smarter, more capable than I'd known I could be. Who'd ordered an ergonomic chair when he noticed my back hurt. Who'd just killed 2 men because they dared to bruise my wrist. Dante Moretti was dangerous, possessive, built on violence and moral compromise. He was also brilliant, protective, and looked at me like I was the only thing in his world that mattered beyond strategy and power. Hey, I said. I'll stay. His smile was rare and genuine, transforming his usually cold expression into something warmer. Just like that. Just like that. I kissed him again, softer this time. But Dante, I have conditions. Of course you do. Affection colored his voice. Name them. I keep running the port consolidation project. I keep working with Luca on the Pellegrino deal. You don't get to cut me out of operations because you're being protective. Agreed. I maintain my financial literacy program on Sundays. That's mine, separate from your empire. Agreed. And you don't make decisions about my safety without consulting me first. We're partners now, not employer and employee. That means I get a voice in how my life is managed. He was quiet for a moment, considering. That last one is harder. My instinct is to protect you by controlling every variable. I know. But I need you to fight that instinct. I held his gaze steadily. I'm choosing you, Dante. But I won't shrink myself to fit into a gilded cage. If this is going to work, you have to trust that I'm capable of navigating danger alongside you, not hidden away from it. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. You're right. And that terrifies me because it means accepting I can't completely control your safety. But you're right. So we have a deal? We have a deal. He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me with possessive tenderness. Partners. In everything. We stood there in the kitchen of the fortress penthouse, holding each other as dawn began to lighten the sky beyond the bulletproof windows. The world outside was dangerous, complicated, built on violence and calculated moves. But here, in this moment, it felt like we'd found something real beneath all the strategy and distance. Friday arrived wrapped in October rain, the kind that made Manhattan's streets gleam like polished obsidian. I dressed carefully for the Marco Pellegrino meeting, tailored black pants, silk blouse in deep blue, hair swept into a professional twist. The bruise on my wrist had faded to yellow-green, barely visible under the bracelet Dante had given me that morning. Armor, he'd said, fastening the platinum around my wrist. And a statement. The statement being that I belonged to him now. That anyone who looked at me would see Dante Moretti's protection wrapped around my wrist in precious metal. Miguel drove me to the office, where Luca was already waiting in the conference room. He looked up when I entered, his smile warm but his eyes assessing. Sophia. You look. He paused, taking in details I hadn't realized were visible. Different. Good, different but different. Eventful week, I said neutrally, setting down my tablet. Is everything ready for Marco? Union contacts confirmed they'll support our position. I've got commitments in writing from 3 of the 4 key union reps. He stood, moving closer. I heard about the Volkov situation. Are you okay? I glanced at him sharply. How did you hear about that? Family gossip travels fast. His expression was concerned, genuine. They're saying Dante went full scorched earth on the Volkovs. That he personally handled the 2 men who threatened you. He did. No point in denying what the entire organization apparently already knew. They made a mistake. He corrected it. By killing them. Yes. I met his eyes steadily. That's how this world works, Luca. Threats get neutralized permanently. He was quiet for a moment, studying me with that thoughtful attention. You're not bothered by it. I'm bothered by the fact that men died because I exist in Dante's orbit, I said carefully. But I'm not bothered by the fact that they died. They threatened me to hurt him. They knew the risks. You sound like you're justifying it. I'm accepting reality. I turned back to my tablet, pulling up the Pellegrino files. This is the world we've chosen, Luca. Pretending otherwise is naive. The door opened before he could respond. Dante entered first, followed by Marco Pellegrino. Younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with the desperate eyes of someone drowning in debt and family expectations. Mr. Pellegrino, I said smoothly, extending my hand. Thank you for meeting with us. I'm Sophia Chin and this is Luca Santoro. He'll be coordinating the union side of the arrangement we're proposing. Marco's handshake was weak, clammy. He glanced at Dante with barely concealed fear, then back at me like I might be a safer focus. Your call said this was about a business opportunity. It is. I gestured toward the chairs. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Water. Water is fine. I poured from the pitcher Antonio had prepared, using the time to let Marco's nervousness build. Dante remained standing by the windows, a silent presence that radiated controlled menace. Luca sat across from Marco, his body language deliberately casual, non-threatening. Mr. Pellegrino, I began, sliding a folder across the table. We understand you have certain financial obligations that have become pressing. His face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. You owe $87,000 to 3 separate bookies. Your credit cards are maxed. You've taken 2 loans against your share of Pellegrino shipping, which your father doesn't know about. I kept my voice gentle, factual. You're drowning, Marco. And we're offering you a life raft. In exchange for what? His voice cracked slightly. In exchange for convincing your father to sell berths 7 through 12 to Moretti Holdings. I opened the folder, revealing the purchase agreement we'd prepared. The price we're offering is fair. Actually, it's generous given the current market. Your father retains operational control of berths 1 through 6. Your family stays in the shipping business. Everyone wins. Except my father will never agree to sell. Those docks are his legacy. That's where you come in, Luca said, his tone friendly. Your father respects your business judgment. He knows you've been looking at the financials, understanding the challenges the company faces. If you present this as a strategic partnership that secures the family's future, he'll listen. And if I can't convince him? I leaned forward slightly. Marco, let me be very direct. Your debts have been purchased by Moretti Holdings as of yesterday morning. All $87,000. Which means you now owe us, not the bookies who were threatening to break your legs. His eyes widened. You bought my debts? We bought your cooperation, Dante said quietly from the windows. His first words since entering the room, delivered with surgical precision. You help us acquire those berths and your debts are forgiven. You refuse and we call them in immediately. With interest. Marco looked between us, trapped in knowing it. That's extortion. That's business, I corrected gently. We identified a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get financial freedom. We get the dock access we need. Your father gets a generous payout and partnership with an organization that can protect his remaining operations from competitors. What competitors? The Russians were sniffing around the Pellegrino docks last month, Luca said. The Benedettis have been making quiet inquiries about your union contracts. Your father's operation is vulnerable, Marco. Too small to defend itself, too valuable to be left alone. Eventually someone will take it. We're offering to do it as partners rather than conquerors. The truth settled over Marco's face like a death sentence. He looked at the purchase agreement, then at me. I help you and my father never knows about the debts? Never, I confirmed. As far as he'll know, you identified a smart business move and convinced him to take it. You become the son who saved the family business, not the one who gambled it away. Marco picked up the pen with shaking hands. When do you need his answer? You have 1 week to prepare your pitch. We'll schedule a formal meeting for next Friday. I pushed the folder closer. Everything you need is in there. Financial projections, union assurances, market analysis. Make him see the logic. He signed the agreement with the defeated posture of a man who knew he'd just sold his soul. After Miguel escorted him out, the four of us remained in the conference room. That was brutal, Luca said quietly. That was necessary, Dante countered. Marco Pellegrino's gambling addiction made him vulnerable. We exploited that vulnerability. This is how empires are built. By destroying desperate people? By identifying leverage and using it efficiently. Dante's voice was cold. If you have a problem with the methods, Santoro, you're in the wrong business. Tension crackled between them. I stood, inserting myself into the silent confrontation. Luca, can you give us the room? I need to discuss something with Mr. Moretti privately. He hesitated, his eyes moving between Dante and me. Then he nodded slowly. Sure. I'll be in my office if you need anything, Sophia. After he left, I turned to Dante. You were too harsh with him. He questioned the approach. He's new to how we operate in New York. Chicago Famiglia have different methods. I moved closer, lowering my voice. You don't need to demonstrate dominance with every capo who asks a question, Dante. Luca is valuable. Don't alienate him because you're still territorial about the dinner we had. His expression flickered. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? I raised an eyebrow. You've been colder to him since Wednesday. More dismissive. It's obvious to anyone paying attention. He's too familiar with you. He's my colleague. We're working on a major project together. Familiarity is natural. He looks at you like, Dante stopped himself, jaw tightening. Like what? Like he's interested in more than a professional relationship. The admission came out tight, controlled. Like he sees you as available. I studied his face, recognizing the jealousy beneath the cold mask. Dante, I chose you. That dinner with Luca was before everything changed. It was professional networking, nothing more. Was it? His eyes searched mine. Because he asked you to text when you got home safely. That's not professional concern, Sophia. That's personal interest. And I shut it down by ending up here with you wearing your bracelet on my wrist. I stepped closer, my hand finding his chest. You don't need to compete with Luca because there's no competition. You already won. Some of the tension drained from his shoulders. I'm not used to this. Wanting someone who other men also see as valuable. Get used to it, I said firmly. Because I'm not going to hide or shrink or stop being competent just to make you feel secure. If you want me, you get all of me, including the parts where other men find me intelligent and capable and yes, attractive. You deal with that jealousy or we don't work. He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me with possessive tenderness. You're right. I'll handle Santoro with more professionalism. Thank you. But Sophia? His voice dropped lower. If he crosses a line, if he tries to pursue you romantically despite knowing you're with me, I will destroy him. Partnership or not. The dark promise in his tone should have worried me. Instead, I felt that complicated tangle of emotions again. The warmth of being valued so completely, the danger of being loved by a man who would burn the world to protect what was his. Fair enough, I whispered against his lips. But you let me handle Luca. I can manage a colleague's potential interest without you going scorched earth. You have 1 week to manage it. After that, I handle it my way. I kissed him to seal the agreement, already planning how to navigate the complicated dynamics between Dante's possessiveness and Luca's potential feelings. This was the reality of my new life. Strategic relationship management layered on top of criminal empire building. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like exactly where I was meant to be. The next week passed in controlled chaos. Marco Pellegrino worked on convincing his father while I coordinated the logistics of the eventual acquisition. Luca managed the union negotiations with impressive skill, securing commitments that would make the transition smooth. Dante became more present in every aspect of my life. Not controlling exactly, but attentive in ways that were both comforting and slightly overwhelming. He knew my coffee order, my preferred work schedule, the exact moment in the afternoon when my energy flagged. His office door stayed open when I was at my desk, his attention tracking me even when he was on calls or in meetings. He's obsessed with you, Luca observed on Thursday, watching Dante watch me through the glass walls of his office. I've never seen him this focused on anything except business. We were reviewing the final union contracts in the conference room, late afternoon sun slanting through the windows. I didn't look up from the document. He's protective. There's a difference. Is there? Luca's tone was gentle, not challenging. Sophia, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. I set down my pen, meeting his eyes. Okay. Are you with Dante because you want to be or because you feel like you don't have a choice? The question hit harder than expected. Why would you think I don't have a choice? Because powerful men in this world don't really ask. They rearrange circumstances until resistance becomes impossible. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. And from the outside it looks like that's what happened. The Volkov attack that put you under his protection. Moving into his penthouse. The bracelet that's basically a claim of ownership. It looks like he engineered a situation where you had to choose him. I thought about that night. The alley, the fear, Dante's confession that I'd been more than an employee for 18 months. Had he orchestrated it? Created the danger to justify the protection? No. The Volkovs had been a genuine threat, independent of Dante's feelings. He'd responded to danger, not created it. I'm with Dante because I want to be, I said carefully. Because he sees me as more than competent. Because he challenges me and protects me and values my mind as much as anything else. Is it complicated? Yes. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. But it's my choice, Luca. Fully and consciously. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Hey. I needed to hear you say it. Why? I asked softly. Why does it matter to you? His smile was sad, knowing. Because I like you, Sophia. I have since that first conference room meeting when you casually mentioned purchasing someone's gambling debt like it was ordering office supplies. You're brilliant and sharp and more human than anyone else in this organization. If circumstances were different, if you weren't already in love with someone else, I'd be trying to convince you to take a chance on me. The confession was gentle, honest, and completely unexpected. Luca. But circumstances aren't different, he continued. You are in love with him. I can see it in the way you look at each other, the way you orbit each other like binary stars. So I'm not going to pursue you or make things complicated. I'm just going to be your colleague and your friend and hope that makes me valuable enough to keep around. Relief and gratitude flooded through me. You're extremely valuable. To the organization and to me personally. Thank you for being direct about this instead of making it weird. I learned a long time ago that honesty is less painful than games. He picked up his pen, returning to the contracts. So, union contract. Clause 17 needs revision. The pension language is too vague. We worked through the remaining issues with easy professionalism, the potential awkwardness dissolving into the kind of collaboration I'd hoped for. When we finally finished, the sun had set, leaving the conference room bathed in artificial light. "Thank you," I said as we gathered our materials. "For being honest about your feelings and for respecting mine. Not everyone would handle it with this much grace. Don't give me too much credit. I'm mostly motivated by self-preservation." He grinned. "Pursuing you aggressively would result in Dante turning me into chum for the harbor fish. I'm charming, but I'm not stupid." I laughed despite myself. "He did threaten to destroy you if you crossed a line." "Called it." Luca headed for the door, then paused. "Sophia? Be careful with him. Men like Dante, men who love that intensely, they can be wonderful and terrifying in equal measure. Make sure the wonderful outweighs the terrifying." "I will," I promised. After he left, I stood alone in the conference room processing the conversation. Luca had feelings for me but was choosing friendship over pursuit. That was the healthy, mature response. The kind normal people had in normal situations. But nothing about my life was normal anymore. I gathered my things and headed to Dante's office, finding him at his desk reviewing the Pellegrino projections. He looked up when I entered, his expression softening in that way it only did for me. "How did the contract review go?" he asked. "Smoothly. Luca made some good catches on the pension language." I set down my bag, moving to stand behind his chair. My hands found his shoulders, working at the tension there. "We're ready for the final signing once Vincent agrees." "Good." He leaned back into my touch, his eyes closing briefly. "Marco reports his father is coming around. We should have the deal closed by next week. Which means the port consolidation will be complete, and the Moretti territory expands into shipping dominance." My hands moved to his neck, finding the pressure points. "Congratulations." "We did this together," he corrected, his hand finding mine and pulling me around to sit on his lap. "Your strategy, your analysis. I just provided the resources and reputation." I settled against him, my head finding his shoulder. "Luca told me he has feelings for me but that he's not going to pursue them because I'm obviously in love with you." Dante went very still beneath me. "He said that?" "Yes." He was respectful and honest and handled it with more maturity than most men would. I should be grateful for his restraint. "But you're not," I observed, hearing the tension in his voice. "No. I'm furious that he dared to develop feelings for you in the first place." His arms tightened around me. "Even though he's choosing not to act on them, the fact that he looks at you and wants you makes me want to end his employment immediately. That's irrational and bad for business." "I know." He pressed his face against my hair, breathing deeply. "But nothing about you makes me rational, Sophia. I thought I'd made that clear." I turned in his lap to face him properly. "Dante, you need to find a way to coexist with the reality that other men will find me attractive and interesting. I can't control that and I won't apologize for it. What I can control is my choices. And I choose you. Every day I choose you." His eyes searched mine, gray and intense. "Even when I'm possessive and irrational?" "Even then." I kissed him softly. "Because you're also brilliant and protective and you make me feel valued in ways no one ever has. The possessiveness is part of the package. I can handle it as long as you don't let it turn into control." "I'm trying," he said quietly. "Fighting every instinct that says to lock you away where no one else can see you, where you're completely safe and completely mine." "Keep fighting those instincts," I encouraged. "Because the moment you give in to them, the moment you try to cage me, this ends. I won't be kept, Dante. I'll only be chosen freely and repeatedly." "I understand." He kissed me deeper, claiming and tender in equal measure. "And Sophia? For what it's worth, I choose you too. Every day. Every moment. Even when it terrifies me how much power you have over me." We sat there in his office as the city lights flickered to life beyond the windows, holding each other and building something that felt more solid than strategy. Something real and dangerous and entirely ours. The Pellegrino deal closed the following Friday. Vincent agreed to the sale after Marco's impassioned argument about securing the family's future. Luca's union contacts delivered on their promises. The contracts were signed in a conference room that smelled like expensive cigars and old money. And just like that, Dante Moretti controlled the most critical shipping infrastructure on the East Coast. "We should celebrate," he said that evening, his hand finding mine as we stood in his penthouse. Our penthouse now. I'd officially moved the last of my belongings in that morning. "What did you have in mind?" His smile was rare and genuine. "Dinner. Rossini's. Just us. The place where I had dinner with Luca? The place where I'm going to replace that memory with a better one." He pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. 3 years, Sophia. 3 years of denying what I felt because I thought you deserved better. I'm done denying it. I want the world to see that you're mine and I'm yours." "That sounds possessive." "It is possessive," he agreed easily. "But it's also true. So yes or no? Dinner at Rossini's where I can look at you across candlelight and not hide that I'm completely in love with you? How could I say no to that?" "Yes," I whispered. "Dinner at Rossini's. But Dante, after dinner we come back here and you show me exactly how you feel. No more distance. No more restraint. Just us." His kiss was answer enough. Deep and claiming and full of promises about what would happen after dinner. We went to Rossini's dressed like royalty. Dante in a black suit that made him look even more dangerous. Me in an emerald dress that matched the bracelet on my wrist. Antonio seated us at the same corner booth where I'd sat with Luca. But everything felt different now. Then I'd been learning a colleague. Now I was celebrating a victory with a partner. Dante ordered the Brunello without asking, the same wine I'd chosen that night. We talked through dinner about everything and nothing. The Pellegrino acquisition, the next expansion targets, whether the Yankees or Mets actually deserved loyalty. He was warm, engaged, smiling in ways I'd never seen in 3 years of working together. "You're different tonight," I observed over dessert. "More relaxed. Because I'm not pretending anymore," he said simply. "For 3 years, every interaction with you required incredible control. Maintaining distance when I wanted to touch you. Speaking professionally when I wanted to tell you how beautiful you are. Watching you leave every night when I wanted to ask you to stay." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Tonight I don't have to pretend. Tonight everyone in this restaurant knows you're mine." "And that you're mine," I corrected softly. "And that I'm yours," he agreed. "Completely and irrevocably." We finished dinner in comfortable intimacy, the kind that came from truly knowing someone beyond the roles you played. When the check came, Dante paid and stood extending his hand. "Take me home," I said, not caring that Antonio could hear. "And show me exactly what 18 months of restraint looks like when it finally breaks." His eyes darkened with want. "Sophia." "Now Dante. I'm done waiting." Miguel drove us back to the penthouse in silence, professional as always despite surely knowing exactly what would happen the moment we walked through that door. Dante's hand never left mine, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that sent anticipation cascading through me. The elevator ride felt eternal. The moment the penthouse door closed behind us, Dante's control shattered. He backed me against the wall, his mouth finding mine with desperate hunger, his hands everywhere at once. My hair, my face, my waist, learning the geography of me through silk and want. "I've wanted this for so long," he breathed against my lips. "Wanted you for so long." "Then stop talking and take me," I commanded, my hands working at his tie, his buttons, anything that created distance between us. We made it to the bedroom in a trail of discarded clothes and broken restraint. And when Dante finally showed me exactly how it felt to be loved by someone who'd denied himself for 18 months, it was everything. Claiming and tender, possessive and reverent, rough and gentle in perfect contradiction. Later, wrapped in expensive sheets with Dante's arms around me and the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling, I felt something settle in my chest. Certainty maybe. Or peace. "I love you," I said into the darkness. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. "I love you, Dante Moretti. All of you. The brilliant strategist, the possessive protector, the man who kills for me and holds me like I'm precious. All of it." His arms tightened around me. "I love you too, Sophia Chin. My weakness and my strength, and the only person who's ever made me want to be better than the monster I've become." We fell asleep tangled together, building something that started with jealousy and evolved into partnership. Something dangerous and real and entirely ours. And when I woke the next morning to find Dante watching me with soft eyes and gentle hands, I knew I'd made the right choice. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful life with a man who loved me enough to become a monster and gentle enough to hold me like I was made of glass. This was what winning looked like. Not empire or power or calculated dominance, but two people choosing each other despite every reason not to. We'd built something real. And nothing, not the Volkovs, not Lucas' feelings, not the dangers of Dante's world, would take it from us. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.